Welcome to a special episode of the Market Red podcast. This is a space where we celebrate the inspiring stories of people with dyslexia and really their path to success. My name is Lindsey Deluce. Hi, I am one of the hosts of CTV's national morning show called Your Morning. So today I'm really excited to welcome Tie Domi. He is a former NHL player known for his passion, his toughness, obviously, and his fight, not just on the ice. I'm not just talking about that, but I'm talking about his fight off the ice as well. Tie played 16 seasons in the NHL. Most of those seasons were played with Toronto Maple Leafs. It's amazing to talk to him. And I really want to dive deep into what you've been doing, Tie, because we know that you've become a passionate advocate for dyslexia awareness, using your journey to inspire other people. So firstly, it's great to meet my favorite Leaf player of all time. So nice to have you on this podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Lindsey. And thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your memoir. I mean, you released your memoir in 2015. And at the time, in those pages, you were writing about and you wrote about that you had dyslexia, and many people didn't know that. What did that feel like at the time to have that information out in the public?
Well, it kind of was through my whole life, and I knew something was up, right? And my mother knew I was no dummy. She would always say, "My son's not stupid. My son's no dummy." But when I went to Peterborough to play junior hockey, they had us go on a radio station, and they had us read for. It was for Christmas time, and everybody had to read lines, and they did two guys at a time, and they gave me this thing to read, and I'm like, this is not going to be good. And I'm like, and then, I had this reporter that actually kind of made fun of me, right? And it didn't really faze me because, I was just that guy. I was a tough kid, and nothing really fazed me. So, and I was like, that's kind of weird, but it was kind of inspiration at the same time, because I just kind of knew that the older I got, when once they found out what dyslexia is all about, because when I was young, nobody could really say what it was and what you had, and learning disability or whatever they wanted to call it. But it all started when I was every day when I went to school. I'd literally I'd be drawing pictures,
Well, that's what I want to ask you about, because I'm just picturing you as I've got three kids. I've got a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and let me think about this 6-year-old. And I'm just thinking about just the classroom environment, right? And just being a kid, period. So I'm thinking about you as a young child. You're in a classroom, you're being told, write these words, read these words. I would think that you would have developed strategies to kind of do those workarounds. Is that the case?
Well, Lindsey, I was very blessed and kind of fortunate. I was a tough kid, and I hung around with everybody. But I really stuck up for back those days, we were allowed to call, the academics were kind of nerds, right? They made a movie,
Right.
Revenge of the Nerds, right? And I literally stuck up for those people when people were picking on them or tease them, because they helped me get through tests and stuff. And, they would write
get through.
They helped me through school, all of them, really, because I stuck up for them. And, I was not a bully. I was always just sticking up for those type of people. And that's kind of what I ended up doing the rest of my, professional career as a hockey player. So, but the teachers, because I was gifted in sports, and I was the best athlete in the school, humbly saying that, but I was in every sport, because that's what kind of my mind was, always wanted to play sports. So whatever was going on in school, I was just thinking of, the recesses and playing soccer or basketball or volleyball. It didn't matter. I had baseball. It didn't really matter what we were playing. I was just looking forward to recess. And then eventually it became, we started winning championships at a young age in public school. And, the teachers were just like, "Hey, it's Tie." So, I would ask to go to the washroom after the first 10 minutes, and I wouldn't come back to class. I would just be in the gym shooting basketballs or something, So,
right. Well, and I guess because the teachers knew how good you were in all these sports, they're like, "Well, you've got to play."
Yeah, we're winning championships too, right? And the principal, my grade 8 teacher, he was the coach of most of the sports. and our principal was a coach of all the sports too. So, you know, it was quite the journey, right? So,
Yeah. But
and
just
now
like
there's so much
yeah,
out there, right?
yeah.
Just so much information and help for kids with dyslexia. And
Well, because were you even able to name it, or was anybody able to name it when you were
no,
younger? What
no,
was going on? Yeah.
no, not till I was, literally in my 20s. So,
Right.
I kind of, I didn't take it as a negative though at all. And,
Hmm.
I had some pretty experienced things happen to me. So they failed. This one teacher actually failed me in grade 5.
Oh,
Yeah.
we remember these moments.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
that was the kind of, because all my friends move on, right? So that was
Oh.
kind of, that was the toughest part.
Wait, so you had to, I failed you, like you had to do it again? Like you had to do grade
Yeah,
5
I
again?
do grade 5 again. Yeah.
So
So that was,
what was the conversation like with your parents then? What were your parents saying?
my mother was, she's still to this day, she's old fashioned, she never driven a car. She never had a cell phone. She's never ate at a restaurant. She's always, she's that old school, right? So,
Ah.
yeah, and I lost my dad at a young age, but my father was always working. So,
Mm.
they were European parents that never really, they weren't hard on me in that way at all. They just, as long as you stay out of trouble, right? So, and I
Yeah.
did stay out of
Yeah.
trouble. But I was very athletic, and my mother always just fed me, so I was always eating and playing sports.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
when I got to grade 7,
Hmm.
um, they actually wanted me to go to a special school. Um, so I ended up actually, I'm going to go to grade 9. Wow, right? I'm going to skip grade 8 and go to grade 9. So I
Right.
go to that school for a week, and it was a different bus and everything. And I got on it, and I was like, everybody was normal, right? Everybody's very nice, and
Yeah.
But I went to the school, and after the first week, all the teachers said, um, "You don't belong here." I'm like, "What do
Hmm.
you mean?" I was getting perfect in every test, right? So, and visually, and that's the thing I learned is visually, I remember everything, right? So
Right.
that was the thing, and it was, that school I went to, I was, kind of ahead of things. So I went back to grade 8. So I
No way.
actually, yeah, so I was actually back to my normal grade. So,
That's
but the
funny.
principal and the grade 8 teacher actually wanted me back there to win all the championships,
Of
and we
course.
did.
Of course.
And then when I'm going to grade 9, all the teachers in grade 9 and the football coach, I never played football, but I was a fast runner and I was a tough kid, and
Yeah.
so he was looking forward to having me. So all the teachers in the high school knew I was coming because I was an athlete, right? So I
Yeah.
got there, and literally they all gave me 50s, right? They all, literally in high school, they all gave me 50s. And I'm
Hmm.
telling you, I never stayed in a full class, and I never wrote one exam once. I never wrote an exam.
Wow.
So, but we won the championship in football.
Well, and that's the thing with like your story when you look at when you were younger, and especially into those teenagers. I mean, sport was the thing, clearly.
Yeah.
Sport, and
So yeah,
everybody around you knew that and were
yeah,
encouraging that, obviously, because you were the best in the school and you were winning the championships. But I have to think, with sport, there is that element of, you've got to read and write. You've got to know the plays. You've got to do,
yeah.
I know the memorization thing probably was really helpful visually for you. But what did you do in those cases? What strategies were you able to implement
In what?
in sports, when you have to, like in sport, any sport you played?
I
There's
just
out,
I was
yeah,
I was gifted athlete. I played every sport, but I outworked everybody.
you outworked everybody.
That was the
When you,
thing. I outworked
yeah,
everybody. I was always the hardest worker in any
yeah,
sport, and I didn't like losing.
yeah,
So,
fair.
but the thing is, when we won a championship in grade 9, and the school's never won a football championship before, right? So,
Hmm.
uh, it was a big deal, and I was like, I was running back, I was middle linebacker, I was kicker, I was punter. I never left the field. So all
Yeah,
the schools from the States were coming to watch me, right? They're like, who's this kid? Who's this kid? Right. So, and here's the other thing that didn't phase me. Like, you see the size of my head, it takes the whole screen, right? So my school was green and white, and the helmets were white with green stripes.
hmm,
they gave me a bright yellow helmet with 2 blue stripes because my head's so big. None of the helmets in the school would fit me. So all these schools would come and watch me, and they would ask the coach, "Which one's that Domi kid?" The one in the yellow helmet.
That's right. Oh, that's so funny.
But I always had the ball. I was always in, tackling guys. I was like in the middle of all the plays, right? So, and then Bo Schumacher, who was the coach in Michigan at the time, he said, to my coach, he's like, I want to talk to this kids. So, and he's like, yeah, because I was like that guy, right? I was like,
Yeah.
football, soccer, hockey was my third sport.
I was going to say hockey wasn't your first, right?
No, soccer was my first, football, and then hockey, and then maybe baseball ahead of football, hockey I should say. So, but Bo Schumacher, the coach of Michigan, that Michigan's like the school. That's the school we watch, and they were like the big deal. And he said, "Which one's the Domi kid?" And they talked to him stuff. And he's like, "Hey, you got to have your grades at a certain amount by grade 11. You have to have an average." And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I was not an academic, right? So he goes, no, we can figure it out. Don't worry. I said, nah. And my coach said to him, he's not really an academic, but he goes, oh no, we can figure it out. But I was not going to school. Like, literally I didn't get past grade 10. I went to Peterborough. Played junior. And my coach, Dick Todd, at the time, he said, hey, Ty, don't worry about school. And it was Peterborough supposed to be the #1 academic school in junior hockey. He said, don't, because I was the toughest kid in the league my first year. So he says, don't worry about school. He says, just don't drag anybody with you, right? So I was at the rink every day playing ping pong with him.
I bet working on your skill set.
Yeah, I was going to school at lunchtime and just going to check out the girls, right? I was 16, 17 years old. So I was going for lunch and
that's it.
that was it.
Time of your life.
I didn't go to class. So that's my academic journey.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, if the support system has been in place, like if somebody had been able to say to you, hey, I think you might have dyslexia. Like what that could have changed for you from an academic standpoint. Do you ever think about that?
I do, but then you hear about, like Steve Jobs and Tom Cruise and Muhammad Ali and Steven Spielberg, like, and Walt Disney, like, and then you got Andy Warhol and Pablo Picasso and John Lennon, and there was three presidents of the United States, right? George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and JFK, they were all dyslexic, right? So like, it's not like it's a common thing out there. So it can't hold anybody back, when people say they have dyslexia, it's like, hey, who gives a shit, right? You'll get through it. Trust me. I'm living proof. I didn't go to school at all.
So when did you find out that you had dyslexia then? How old were you? Or when was that named for you?
Kind of, I'd say 20.
What did you think when you heard that?
I was right, and I didn't really understand it. She said, I knew you weren't dumb. I knew you weren't stupid, kind of thing, So that was a reassuring thing, because when my mother speak English too well, and my she would come to school and have the meetings, the parent meetings, and she'd say, my son's no dummy, he's no stupid. That's how she talks. So there's so many stories out there that I think everybody can share, and I'm here to really tell anybody that there's really nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't learn from dyslexia, and if there's anybody on the planet that you can learn that from, it's definitely me, because I lived that journey, and nobody, all these kids that have dyslexia weren't athletes like me, or they weren't as tough as me, right? So it's kind of a funny journey, my journey, because I'm very comfortable in talking about it. But the ones who don't want to talk about it, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's why I wanted to come on your show and tell people that there's nothing to be ashamed
Mhm.
of whatsoever. And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of, where I'm at
It's such an
in
important
life.
message,
I'm on the
Yeah.
back nine, right? So,
What does she mean back nine though? You've had some
yeah.
good
So,
rounds so far.
I'm in my early 50s now, but still,
Yeah.
I'm, time has passed, and the
Yeah.
memories I have as a kid, and, they're kind of, there's certain ones that stick out, and there's certain ones I don't remember. Then people tell me, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to stay positive on the positive side
Yeah.
of things, the positive side of life. And, that's dyslexia really had nothing to do to hold me back whatsoever in anything.
Hmm. Yeah, clearly. I mean, you've had such successes both on and off the ice.
Mm.
The fact that you put this memoir together, and I say put this memoir together because the way that you went about it, I find is such an interesting story. Can you tell everybody a little bit about how you were able to put shift work together?
Well, when I first thought about doing a book, because I was approached many times because, I had the most fights in NHL history. And then there's less fighting, less fighting, and less fighting. So everybody's like, hey, you have the most fights in NHL history, 333. I'm like, really? And then you look at the
Yeah.
stats. I'm like, oh my God, I do. And then there's less fighting. So I got a record, I guess, that will never be broken because there's not much
Right.
fighting anymore, right? So when all that came about, I said, I don't want to talk about fighting. Like, that's my past life. I don't. And I said, I want to do the book how I want to do it. Old school values and I lost my father at a young age at 21. So
Mm.
I was 21. So I said, I want to do it. The values my father taught me, and treat people how you want to be treated, and look them in the eye, and say please and thank you and all that stuff. And because, those times have kind of gotten away from us with, the iPhones and cell phones and all this stuff. And especially, I see it with my own kids. I would say, you look that person in the eye when you say hi. You shake their hand. You look them in the eye.
100%.
Um,
Yeah.
so, the respect of anybody, right? Whether it's a bus driver or whether it's a parking lot lady, or it really doesn't matter. A bartender, a bellman.
Mhm.
And so Simon Schuster says, well, you have to have living, like real life stories if you're going to do a book about that. And I'm like, I live it every day. I see it every
Right.
day. So then I started, okay, you want me to do it that way? I started taking people's names. Hey, what's your name? What's your name?
Yeah.
I started, I'm going to write about that. I'm going to write about that. I'm going to write about you. So I literally started doing that, and they were shocked. Simon Schuster was shocked because
Hmm.
they really wanted to do the book about fighting and hockey, and I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And if you read the book, there's not much about fighting. There's not, I
Yeah.
kind of give a few secrets out on how I did it, right? But
Right.
other than that, it was treating people how you want to be treated. Old school values dedicated to my father, and life lessons.
Mm.
Things I went through in my life that I learned from, and dyslexia was definitely one of them, and. The book, a guy named Jim Lang kind of put it all together, but my wife really wrote my book.
Yeah. Tell me about that because you spoke the words, right, to get this book
Yeah, I
out.
spoke, like, I give the stories and all that stuff, and then but then we flew to Italy, and
Hmm.
literally my wife, I, she read me the book, every page by page, and I'm like, that's not me, that's not me.
Mm.
I wouldn't say it like that because it's supposed to be my words and how so
Yeah.
she redid it on our trip to Italy on the plane because I'm not a good flyer. So, we did it on the plane, and she had my full divided attention, which is very tough to do, right? Because, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, the whole
Yeah. Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? So I got that whole ball of wax. So my wife had me like, and she loved it. And, she didn't get the name on there, but it was definitely my
Mm.
wife who wrote the book, the way I wanted it to be done,
Yeah.
and in my words. And,
Yeah.
Jim Lang did put the stories and stuff, but I took out a lot. I changed everything,
Yeah.
and it ended up being number one bestseller for many weeks
Yeah.
in a row in Canada. So,
That's right.
number one best-selling author, Lindsay. What can I say?
Yeah, that's really cool.
With
Isn't that
with
cool?
dyslexia, number one
Well,
best-selling author. So
yeah.
if I can be a number one best-selling author for weeks and weeks and weeks, Anybody
Right.
can.
I love that. I really love that. I mean, you have so much to be proud of in your life. You talked about family, obviously your NHL career, your drive. When you sort of think, and I know this is like, you say you're on the back nine, but I think you're just like 50% there. So if you, no, which is the same thing, like, wait a second. When you look at like the scope of your life, your journey so far, what are your proudest moments?
Well, it's tough to go past my three kids,
Yeah.
all three of them are so special in their own way. And, it's not easy being, a hockey player's kid in especially Toronto, when you're such under the microscope with that last name. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know what it's like to a certain extent yourself. And it's not easy. And, David Beckham actually was a friend of mine. He said to me, it's not easy to be our kids, Ty.
Mm.
And he's thinking England and the world, and I'm thinking, yeah, in Toronto and Canada, he's right. And I thought about that, and the more I think about it, it's like, yeah. So y- I try and give my kids as much rope as I could throughout their life, and I did, and make their own journeys. And all three of them really have done a really good job on,
Cool.
making their own journeys, and that's the most proud I am. And
Yeah.
kids are my life. So, um,
Yeah.
and my son being in Toronto now, it's pretty cool. The legacy thing, and
Yeah.
and everybody, the ex players, that see him, that see me, they say, "Hey, Ty." Max goes out of his way to say hi to me, and that makes me proud.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to, great role models, which is, the theme of, seems like what you have put a lot of effort into, that look in the eye,
Yeah,
that strong handshake. It's so important. I agree with you
yeah, and
wholeheartedly.
the parking lot lady in the Air Canada Center, it's a different one
Yes.
now, but
Yeah.
she says your son is the nicest boy, and he every
Oh,
day he always puts his window down and says hi when he comes in, and it like that kind of stuff.
yep.
It just, you can't hear that enough about
Yeah.
things your kids have done, good things, and it never gets old when you hear good things about your kids, and that's kind of my
Absolutely.
proudest moments.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. And I do relate to that a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
never
uh,
gets old, does it?
no, and you know what? And you alluded to this too, but I think years ago I asked my dad. I said, "Do you ever?" This is I was in my 20s or something, and I said, "Do you ever wish we were really young again?" And so we were all, traveling as a unit, and we were little and cute, and whatever. And he looked at me and said, that was a great part of life. But you know what's even better? Sitting around the table and you all have your own thoughts and ideas and lives, and to hear who you've become and the influences and all that. So I find this so exciting. And he's really like said those
Mhm.
markers too with whatever
Yeah,
age we're at. And I'm with my children as well. I'm really enjoying the people that they're becoming. I think it's fascinating. I'm
yeah.
excited to see what's next. Yeah,
Well,
it's really
I'm
special.
at that stage where my kids are older, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I never lived life before, and they know way better than me now, right?
Well,
I'm at
yes.
that stage.
Don't get me wrong. I have several of my children who seem to know more than me right now, but I'm sure that'll sort itself out. Speaking of children, I want to ask you lastly about, somebody watching right now, maybe somebody who's younger listening right now, thinking, I'm exhausted, I feel frustrated, I feel lost, somebody living with dyslexia, the challenges that come with that, especially in the school environment and really just, life. What would you say to them?
Well, you know, I think like dyslexia was really a positive for me, not a negative. And
Mm,
I always say like it made me a successful professional hockey player, and that's because it taught me to work harder than everyone else. And I'm there. There's nothing. I always thought there's nothing I could do, and there's really nothing you can't learn from dyslexia. So, um, if that little those words help someone, and just honestly, don't take yourself so seriously when you find out you have dyslexia, because I'm living proof that you can have a really fun journey, and keep it going. And I just stay positive and look ahead, and I took it as a positive.
And the success is just waiting for you down the road. Hey, Tie Domi, this has been fun. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you so much. And say hi to your dad for me.
Oh, I will for sure. And I do want to thank our listeners as well for joining us on this special episode of the Market Read podcast. It's really cool to have Ty share his journey with us, his journey with dyslexia and how he's turned his challenges into strengths. It's been really inspiring. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of resilience and triumph in the dyslexia community. Until next time, I'm Lindsey Deluce. Let's keep breaking the silence around dyslexia together.